Hey, welcome to 1000 Ways to be a Champion for Children. My name's Alan Friesen, and my guest today is Megan Cotterill. And Megan, oh my goodness, she is quite her resume. Let me just find this here. I was looking at this thing, and oh my, I'm surprised she even agreed to talk to me. So she's has many accomplishments. One being the owner operator of Five Elements Martial Arts since 2004. Western Canada's busiest and most inclusive martial arts studio, an 11-time world champion martial artist, and Canadian president of the World Kickboxing and Karate Union since 2018. My goodness, that is quite a resume, Megan.
Thank you.
Wow. So I know from the conversation we had briefly, you use martial arts as really a healing tool and also a resilience building tool. Would that be a fair statement?
That is an absolutely fair statement. Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So, ever since I was little, when I found martial arts, I realized it was the sport for me. I was the only girl for a really long time. I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. I didn't feel safe and confident at home or in school. I got bullied a ton. So I was being bullied every day that I went to the bus stop at 8 years old, and then was able to find a karate studio that I could walk to on my own and that was available to me. Started there, was the only girl, and I started to build up my confidence. I started to get some resilience. I got all my stress out. With my ADHD, it taught me how to focus. It taught me how to speak clear. It taught me how to overcome challenges. It taught me perseverance. And I knew with martial arts that I could catch up to other students and I could learn at the pace that worked for me. And I could be a leader and a mentor. I could help other people to feel more comfortable as they entered the program. So martial arts ever since I was little, starting with Goju Karate, I would say saved my life and took me to where I am today. I got to be what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I knew at 8 years old that this is what I wanted to be, but I'd never seen a female dojo owner or studio owner before. I wasn't taught by a female instructor for the first 8 years of martial arts. And I knew what I wanted to feel like when I got to my end goal of being a black belt. And I'm really excited that when I grew up, I got to create that position.
That is amazing. That's how life is supposed to work. You have a goal when you're a little person and you achieve it. That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know if I told you why I started having these conversations, but there's I volunteer with a victim services unit and have since 1995. Not the important work, just the paying right, getting applying for money and writing checks and those kind of things. The advocates we have, they're heroes. They go and help people who are having their worst days to kind of get through them and kind of make a new plan with life. And so the stats at that time, back in the day, the worst type of a situation that we dealt with was something like a notification of next of kin. And how it would work is the RCMP officer and the BSU person would come and at somebody's doorstep and knock on the door and say, "Mary, I'm sorry to inform you that Gordon has passed away in a car accident," right? And then the victim services unit folks would stay with them. So big value they're providing for Mary, who's having a really tough day, right? We get a little clicking. I don't know if it's or you're not moving anything. Do you hear the clicking?
A little bit, yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. I'm sure it's not for me, but anyways. So then the last 2 years ago, the coordinator for it, her name is Adonis. She points out to me that the stats now are number one and number two concerns that are expressed, that are reported to us, that we're trying to help with, are child sexual abuse and child abuse. Number one and number two. And this was, to me, was a huge, like, I could not believe this. I didn't know this was a case, which led me to this whole thing about adverse childhood experiences and how these work and how, without getting the supports and the help, people have a really tough time having a good life after. Now, you have some lived experience about this matter, correct?
I do. Yeah, I do. I experienced sexual assaults for the first time. The youngest I can remember, I was 3 years old because I was still in Toronto when I was 3 years old. It was the youngest I could remember by an extended family member. And it sort of shaped, especially realizing now what I've gone through in my life, some of the choices that I've made, um, some of the mental illness things that I've had to deal with throughout my whole life, and what I thought was normal and what wasn't. So really, it was at a young age, and having it done when I was so young, and very impressionable, and by a family member I was supposed to trust. And then speaking to someone, was my mother, that I told, she basically said, just don't go with that person anymore. We're not going to talk about it. Let's just move on with this family gathering, and that's it. So now realizing as an adult, I felt very unseen, very unheard. I thought it was super normal to be touched in those ways, even though in my stomach, I remember feeling absolutely sick to my stomach as little as I was. And that led to, um, I think, different experiences that happened in my life from then on. And I mean, it was the first sexual assault I'd ever had, but it was definitely not the last. And the last one was super severe, and that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and that's like, so your mom's response, I'm sure she was just trying to move on with life, but that didn't afford you a way to heal from that, right? That didn't address it. That didn't correct this family family members. Like maybe you weren't the only one he abused afterwards, right? We don't know that. So your mom's response, I'm sure that was the best she could do at that time, but that really wasn't what little Megan needed. Little Megan needed a little bit more support than that, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And, it definitely led me to those choices, knowing that when assaults happened later on in my life, um, no one would listen to me. I couldn't tell anyone. No one believed me. No one thought it was very important. And even though it made me feel terrible, I felt guilty that I felt terrible. I felt so much shame and so much blame. And I felt that honestly, this is one of the worst things I think I've ever thought, was that this is just how you live life. Like typical Tuesday
Yeah.
is, this is something I'm going to have to go through for the rest of my life. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to figure out. I started, um, I can't remember the word right now, but it was like a carpet mental. I can't say it, but it was, I put things to the
Compart
side.
compartmentalized? Is that
Yes,
compartmentalized?
sorry, I don't know why I can't say that today, but
That's
I
okay.
did. I put it to the side, and I remember just thinking, I need to have better mental toughness, because I'm the only one that's not dealing with this, and this happens to people all the time. And it actually took a counselor to go, this isn't normal. This doesn't happen to everybody. This doesn't happen as severely as it happened to you. This doesn't happen as often as it happened to you. So what you're going through isn't normal, and we need to start embracing the fact that something really, really terrible continuously happened to you, and we need to go forward in a new normal and a new way to retrain our brain and a new way to problem solve. Like I used to take myself outside of my body. When it happened, I was like, okay, well, I guess I just need to go to a different happy place and just think about not being present and not being here, and maybe that'll make them hurt me less.
And I learned something about that, Megan. And now you have the lived experience of it. But here's the way it was explained to me, which I think what you're talking about. This counselor that I have seen to learn more about ACEs and adverse childhood experiences and my own personal growth and development, she was telling me about this disassociative response. So it's the exact opposite of the fight or flight type thing. It's where your body, your soul, your spirit, something within you to protect you, just floods your body with endogenous opioids to let you deal with the pain. And then you just you separate from your body. That's kind of what I hear you saying, right?
That's exactly what happened. And I didn't know what PTSD was. And I didn't know until I completely shut down. And the last time that it happened really badly was probably about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I was watching a movie. And what had happened was, all of a sudden, I kept replaying everything that happened in my head because I wasn't able to deal with it at the time. Something else triggered it. And then my brain was trying to problem solve the entire time by repeating it, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it, and going, what could you have done better? What could you have done differently? How do we problem solve? What should we have done? And I never processed it at the time, because this person had attacked me so much and it happened so often. And I felt like I didn't have the ability to the consequences were too high, and he was much bigger than me to retaliate the way that I knew that I could. So I felt guilt and shame being a martial artist, not being able to defend myself. But even as a kid, knowing it's not okay to tell someone because no one really cares.
Right.
So all of those memories and all of that repression and everything else, you're right, it comes out at a different time. And often that's PTSD, or what a lot of people claim they feel like when they are going through something like that.
Yeah. And back to like the response that you got, or the support that you got, it was basically the adults that you might have felt comfortable telling, they were, that was a challenge for them to kind of move forward to assist, right? To help out with that, right? Like they wouldn't know what to do exactly, and they just kind of want to make that go away is really what they're planning on, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's one thing, that whole disassociative response, that and it, you understand what that is, and people who have had those same experiences, you would know that too. But the people that I think often don't know it, the general public don't know it, but also law enforcement and the criminal justice folks, right? The court system sometimes don't. And then what do? They put more shame and blame on the victim who's already dealing with all this trauma. And then, oh, well, you didn't cry out, you didn't scream, you didn't fight, so you must have been this must have been consensual somehow. And that's obviously not the case, right? But that's kind of where that leads them to, right? So
I actually have a personal experience with that as well. So the first time I was brave enough to come forward, I was 19, and he was my boss.
oh,
And it was in front of a witness as well. And he sexually assaulted me at an actual, like, a staff event. And there was other assaults before then. He'd been doing it to several other girls. And then at this big staff gathering, he did it in front of another manager. And I just remember I was devastated and wanted to quit everything. And actually, at the time, I was working with the Calgary Police Service, just with their youth services, like Simon the Safety Bear. So I was
yeah.
able to tell a police officer, and what she told me was, how would you feel if this happened to your younger sisters? So that's when I decided to press charges, go through court. It was one of the worst experiences I'd ever been through. My reputation got dragged through the mud. Um, I was shamed by all of his friends, people that he knew, our entire industry. And then I had to relive it when he went to court. And then because it was the first time he'd been charged, it went down to an assault. He
Mhm.
did get convicted, but he actually ended up committing suicide.
Oh, is that right? Eh?
So me going through what it felt like through my reputation, my job, friends we knew, their attacks towards me as well. And that was even in front of other people. And the manager did come and was a witness in court as well. But what if he had not been there either?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then even with the charges, they were reduced, and still something terrible happened, and I felt extremely guilty for a very, very long time, thinking that was my responsibility, that the outcome happened to him and his life and his mental health, which makes me feel awful. And actually, I have had a hard time with that ever since, and I haven't charged anyone ever since.
Wow. Do you're the family member when you were little, we Megan at 3 years old, then did that family member ever kind of get any, like, when did you ever forgive that family member?
That's a hard question, because I don't think that I've ever asked myself if I have forgiven. I think because this is going to sound maybe a little bit strange, but maybe it's not. I know other people where they've had a family member that has behaved in that way, and the family sort of knows about them. And
Oh,
so in
okay.
my family, it was like, oh, well, that's just what he's like. Stay away
Mm,
from him. It's just his personality. It's just, we all kind of keep our distance. We all try to keep the kids away from him. And it was like more common knowledge.
wow.
And
Wow.
so it was even crazier. And so for me, I didn't know that I had to forgive him, or that that was a thing. And now what's so crazy is that I think because it was just a part of his personality, I didn't I wasn't as angry at him as I
Mm,
have been at other people in my childhood and in my life.
hmm, hmm.
I know that might sound really strange, but there have been some people I've forgiven and some people I haven't. I mean, when it's a teenager experience and you're learning dynamics between male and female, and that their friends are pushing them to be inappropriate, and they're just trying to figure out dynamics of things and where their boundaries are, and they're listening to friends and they're listening to bad mentors. I've forgiven lack of experience. But I've had a hard time forgiving people that have had malicious intent,
Yes.
and have been very violent and have done it as a dominance and a belittlement and as a repression type of act, as
Right.
opposed to maybe just a life experience. I've forgiven those people for sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can understand. I don't know how you could forgive somebody where it was a malicious, violent act, right? It's not like, things got awry and there was alcohol or drugs or, whatever, that things just kind of went sideways and then it's still wrong, but at least it's a little more understandable and a lapse in judgment than an intentional, I'm going to hurt this person, right? Like that's two different sides, right? I think so.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and your experience of not being able to express it or not being safe to be able to express that is common, right? There's people who have like suffered in silence of the trauma they've experienced as a little person, and it's decades and decades before they can even tell somebody about it, right? But it is something that certainly impacts your ability to be happy if you somehow, I believe, is somehow you think yourself less. Somebody who's been assaulted believes themselves somewhat less. Otherwise, how could that person do that to them, right?
Yeah.
And they also, as a little person, somehow they think it's always their fault, right? They caused this. They had somehow made this happen, right? And if you, for the rest of your life, keep the thought that you're faulty, that it was your problem as a little person that this happened, that's ludicrous, right? And I think if you never go back to that and kind of address that situation and get it clear in your mind, 3-year-old Megan was beautiful, perfect, spotless. Like there's no shame, no blame for 3-year-old Megan, right? It's impossible. So
Well, and if the person was never punished, I mean, when you're a little kid, if you do something that someone thinks is wrong, you get punished.
right,
And so you don't feel like something inside your heart and yourself knows it's really wrong. Like you feel gross and violated, and in your heart it's wrong. But when they don't get punished, you
yeah,
never learn to trust yourself. You never learn to trust your gut. You never learn to trust your instinct. And now realizing, actually, this is a new revelation for me, is I think every time that I had a strange gut feeling to be in a situation or in a room alone or having a conversation with someone or in a situation where I felt like it could go badly, I would tell myself I was crazy. I
hmm.
wouldn't
So
believe my gut instinct anymore.
right. And so what happens when you turn off your instincts, right? When you disassociate from your instincts, that's trouble, right? That's a problem because your instincts are there for a reason, right? So just like even when you said when you were first touched inappropriately by this family member, you knew at that first touch that was wrong. This is not right, correct?
Yeah, I don't want to spend time with this person. He makes me feel gross and icky, and like you shouldn't be
Exactly.
touching something that I know we don't touch.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then because he never really got in trouble and it's just something I need to get used to and feel comfortable with and understand, I'm constantly questioning that. And I'm constantly thinking that it's a normal thing I need to get used to. And I have to check myself and I have to regulate myself in order to get through that for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I can understand that about if he never was penalized in any way for it, it's just like, oh, that's how he is, just kind of, stay out of his way. That would reinforce for you that, well, then I must be the problem if he's just this way, right? Wow, that I never thought of that, but I can see how that would be very damaging for there not be some kind of consequences to that damage, those damaging acts. right? So now, did
Well,
he
he
ever
was.
get some kind of? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, he never got punished.
Never
He's
got
never
punished.
been punished. He's never been charged. I don't know if it's happened to other family members. There wasn't a lot of. Well, I do have little girl cousins. I haven't spoken to them about this in particular, which I actually probably should now that I'm thinking about this. I haven't ever told them. The only
Yes.
family member that I think that even ever knew was my mother. Um, and when she just didn't kind of care, then I was like, what's the point of telling anybody else, right?
Right. Right.
But then also because that person never got punished and I was the one in the way and I was the one to stay away from him and things like that, when I think about assaults that happened later, I would always think like, was I in the wrong place? Did
Mm-hmm.
I wear the wrong thing?
Mm-hmm.
Was I mean, we're seeing this in the media all the time as the victim blaming, but victims blame themselves so much. And changing that narrative is crazy, crazy, crazy important. Just
Definitely
because
so.
I was wearing a skirt, or just because I went and had a conversation with a boy in a separate room, because I let someone drive me home, or
Yeah.
I let another fighter come into my hotel room so we could talk about fighting, and that was not their intention.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There is that's and maybe it's because of the shutting down the intuition part. But somebody who has been sexually abused as a child, their potential to become a perpetrator or a victim again is much greater, right? The potential for that to go either way. And part of it, I think you've identified, is that if you shut down your intuition and say, I must be wrong, because look, this guy didn't get any consequences. Mom just says, oh well, this carry on, right? Like you must have had some anger at your mother. I would have to think that she didn't do more or didn't like demand that you get some kind of apology. I don't know, something like that. Were you mad at your mom for that reason?
Actually, my mother and I do not have a relationship at all. She
Okay.
is not allowed anywhere around me or my son. She's made some very poor choices with my siblings. It was a very abusive time growing up, to the point where I did look after my younger siblings as soon as I moved out, on and off quite a bit. My siblings have really, really struggled. And um, I think that she suffers from her own issues and illness and things like that as well. But being younger, what it taught me was, if I'm going to get love and acceptance from my mom, I need to be providing constant acts of service. I need to camouflage myself into the little girl that she wants. I need to tell her what she needs to hear. I need to make sure that I become that perfect little girl in her eyes, and I don't create my own identity. And I'm never allowed to speak my own truth. I'm never allowed to be totally honest. I'm not allowed to uh, share with her when I'm struggling and hurting. I'm not allowed to stick up for myself. Um,
In essence,
I
you
just
can't be you. In essence, you can't
no,
be you to get that love and attention, right? So, yeah,
no, and I found that that has severely affected the rest of my life, and especially being an adult and creating a lot of depression, anxiety, having a hard time with my identity. I mean, martial arts and fighting gave me a really positive outlet and a very, very positive identity. And it helped me to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, what I wanted to represent. And being a martial arts instructor, I never wanted anyone to feel the way that I felt, never be like, I wanted to see them. I wanted to hear them. I wanted them to feel like themselves. I wanted them to be strong. I wanted them to be an individual and do things differently. And I wanted to create that safe space for them, because my space was never safe unless I was what they wanted. And
yeah,
obviously, in a relationship, any type of intimate relationship or friendship or anything, if you can't ever show who you really are, that's a lot of stress and pressure and anxiety and panic, and always trying to think about 4 steps ahead and never really thinking about yourself and your needs and wants and deservingness even.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And you know what? I just finished a course with about authentic leadership, masterclass in authentic leadership with David Irvine and Ali Stone. And that's a big part of that, is just allowing you to be you, right? Like, we each have a path that we're on, and that should be that we can express it to our full extent. That I want 100% of the Megan Cotterill. I want to be 100% of the Alan Friesen, right? I want you to be your best self. I want to be my best self. And together we can do amazing things, right? You know, if we're all our best selves and all living the life we were supposed to live, right? And making the difference we were supposed to make, man, the difference you're making in your students' lives, you're the young ladies, I'm sure some young men, but mostly young ladies that would come to you and tell you these things, and you can say, I'm going to listen. I hear you. I see you. I believe you, right? That's got to be a huge value to them. Like, you're changing their lives.
I've actually had a lot of men, when I started speaking out about what happened to me, that have come and shared their stories too. And it's been very sad to see how it shaped their life and what they think is normal and how they feel like they deserve to be treated. And also, when you've been abused, you do feel like that's what you deserve and that there is something wrong with you if people keep hurting you. And so, and there's also a level of comfort in a strange way to be around people that hurt you, because the people that are supposed to love you the most and tell you the truth were the ones that hurt you. So you sort of subconsciously look for that in your life as well.
Because it's some attention from somebody you value, kind of a thing? Is
No,
that
it's almost a level of comfort.
a
It's
level
what
of
you
comfort?
know. It's what you know. The people that were supposed to love you the most, if they were the ones that were abusive or didn't listen to your abuse,
Yeah.
you think that that's what love is. You think
Got it.
that's what
Got it. Got it.
relationships are. And so it becomes like you sort of look for that kind of comfort in a way.
Right. Okay. And that's what you look for future as well. That's what you're saying. This is what
Or
you
I
were
did.
taught.
Yep.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. If this was it, you believed as a little person, you were taught that love is, well, you're going to find more of those relationships, right? Which explains some very bad choices that some women make with some men who are, like, obviously very bad and abusive, and want to control their behavior and manipulate them, that kind of a thing. You can see how that could happen. And if this is what you're taught, this is the way it's supposed to be, then this is who you choose to have that same experience, right? So
It takes a complete retraining of your brain. It takes sometimes hitting that emotional rock bottom where the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD becomes so great that you have to choose eventually yourself, and to survive and to be a survivor and to fight through all of it, or to give up.
yes, yes. And fundamentally, that thought process of that you're somehow, that you caused it, or you're not worthy, or you're somehow defective, if you retain that for the rest of your life, how much are you gonna, your enjoyment of life is certainly going to be left, right? Because don't you think that you should value yourself highly, that you should love yourself, right? That, would you not agree that that's, like, really important to have the best life you can have?
Yeah, but you don't understand what love really is.
Right, exactly.
You,
Yes, if that's how you were taught it, then yeah, you don't get what it even means, right? So
if there was no boundaries, if there was no respect, if there was no real intimacy, if there was no real honesty, you have no idea what relationships to look for. You have no gauge to see what was good and what wasn't good. And then you also don't follow your instincts by
yes,
saying, ooh, you second guess going on a second date. You second guess how you're treated. You believe their excuses. You believe their reasons for behaving the way that they are. I mean, I think the ones for me that I don't believe any longer, except a lot of good therapy and support,
yes.
was, well, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done it. If you didn't trigger me, I wouldn't have done it. If you didn't
Oh
make
yeah,
me
okay.
feel like this, I wouldn't have done it. And so
Okay.
there's still that level of blame and responsibility that the victim will take upon themselves. And because they've never followed their instincts, they've never felt really loved and secured, they're always checking themselves. They're always going, oh my goodness, well, I must have done something wrong. I need to work harder. I need to be better. I need to really fight for that love. And I need to earn it in some way, which is total crud. You don't need
Exactly.
to earn someone's love.
No, no, exactly. Wow. We're talking about your mom, and I might have been not very complimentary about your mother and how she was when she was your mother when you were young. And parenting is a hard job, probably the hardest job in the world. So nobody gets it right. Um, uh, but there's certainly ones that get it extremely wrong, as in where your mother was at her place, and how she responded. You're a mom. tell us about your relationship with your child and your. I bet you are a pretty awesome mom. Would that be
I
would that
don't
be a good guess?
know. I hope so. I hope I'm creating like a very loving, very structured, very open and honest household and relationship with my son. So my son's autistic. He is 11. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my whole life. He is all things good in the world. He is an opposite personality than me, which is crazy because he teaches me so much about patience and understanding and logic and seeing different perspectives. And what's very, very cool about him was he didn't have the social skills when it came to emotional responses, social responses, intimacy, and the communication, the verbal. So it's been really great teaching him why we hug. The best thing that I think I've ever seen from him in an emotional way and having it shown in a different way was he put his hand on, and it wasn't my heart for the first time. I didn't realize that when I love up on him and I give him hugs, I actually put my hand on his chest and I rub it, and I didn't know I was doing that.
Okay.
And he fell in love with um, someone very close to us, a very important part of our family. And he put his hand on his heart and he started to rub it.
Ah,
And this person was like, "Hey, bud, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm rubbing your heart because I love you."
oh, nice.
And literally, it was the most beautiful thing that you have ever seen. But he didn't know about love and affection. He didn't know communication skills, but he knows he's allowed to tell me anything. He knows he's allowed to cry. He knows he's allowed to be frustrated. He knows that he's allowed to ask for an outlet and a sensory outlet. And I do work a lot and I feel a little bit guilty about that. And I was a single mom for a long time. And he's seen mom work. He's seen mom have bad days. He's seen mom explain to him that I'm not perfect and that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be exhausted. It's okay to have those bad days. It's okay to have someone hurt your feelings and be able to express that and trust that people in your life are going to hear you and listen to you. So he's an incredibly amazing kiddo.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. And very challenging, I'm sure. Like, he's quite different than you said. So it's you have to kind of re-gauge how, you're gonna connect with him. But that's amazing that you're about him rubbing on you rubbing on his chest was a show of love, and then he reciprocated that to somebody else he loved. That's beautiful. So
Yeah, and it was cute. I remember I went to World Championships and he came to pick me up at the airport, and the person that was with him, said, "Do you miss your mom?" Nope. But when I see her, my heart is happy.
oh, there you go.
And that was like, that's how he responds, right? Is how he, like, how love feels to him, how affection feels to him, how those things feel to him is actually quite beautiful. And I wished, so I'm trying to give him the things that I wish I would have had when I was younger.
And I'm sure you're doing a great job at it, Megan.
Thanks. I sure hope. I think I make lots of mistakes, but he definitely tells me when I am, when I'm making mistakes and when I'm not.
There was something I was going to just mention. What was it? Oh, you don't have time for watching any TV with your busy life, but on Netflix, there's a series called Atypical. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't. No.
Anyways, it's a beautiful, beautiful series. So heartwarming. Such a beautiful little story about basically an autistic boy and his family, and just kind of how they've learned how to kind of connect with him in the right way. And like when you hug, there's got to be I can't remember. I think it's high wants a lot of pressure, not a light hug. It's got to be otherwise it doesn't work, right? And then also the big sisters kind of coaching them on ways to kind of self-regulate and those kind of things. It's a very nice little show. So, yeah.
See, I love that, but I did manage to watch Love on the Spectrum.
Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah, and that's on Netflix too. And it was about single autistic adults trying to find love and trying to figure out what relationships look like and how to communicate. And I think I cried the entire series.
Really? Oh, that's
time.
awesome.
Yeah. But after watching Atypical, it sounds amazing, and it sounds very, very similar to my son as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, right? If you're not curious, you see somebody that's different than you fear them, right? That like not that's the normal response, right? You see somebody different and you're fearful of them. But if you're curious and ask the question, you find some pretty amazing things. And like look even your son in terms of how, he could express his love that way. That's pretty amazing stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what's cool is that, teaching him about emotions and teaching him about those social behaviors has made me realize more about myself and be more in touch with how I communicate and how I express myself and how I self-regulate and all of those beautiful things as well. So it's been a pretty great journey.
So tell me this. You're a self-regulation master. What tips, tricks do you have? What are your best tools that work for Megan? I realize there's 1,000 ways, but what works for Megan if you're a little dysregulated? How does Megan get back?
So I am ADD ADHD diagnosed, very highly actually. So you can't see me right now, but my legs are moving like crazy. So I have a really really hard time staying still and not fidgeting. Structure is very very important. Having an emotional, psychological, physical outlet. So I really love therapy. I love being able to talk freely to someone to problem solve and work things out. I love having, I kind of almost trick myself into having structure. I don't prefer structure, but if I have all these appointments I need to show up for, then I can self regulate. Yeah, which is kind of funny. And martial arts has always been that way for me too. So it's given me those reasons to show up as my best self and to regulate. So I can be such a grump in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I can hate everything, but I know I have to show up to work. I know I have to teach. I know I have to bring good energy. So martial arts, because I have to be that way for other people, it helps regulate myself and my emotions. And I
That makes
don't
sense
always
to
do
me.
so well. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
got it.
always do so well in the quiet either. So
Oh,
being
you don't
able to punch, kick a heavy bag helps me self-regulate so much.
Megan, you broke up just a little bit there. You said about quiet, and then what was the thing you said?
Oh, sorry. So I don't do so well with being quiet. So teaching
Okay.
myself to meditate has been really hard. Yoga is very hard for me. So through martial arts, I've been able to have a lot of self-regulation because it's been a positive environment, positive people around me, and just having that aggressive physical outlet gives
Yes.
me the opportunity to keep my body busy and get all my energy out. So it allows me the ability to actually think and problem solve and self-regulate, plus all the endorphins and everything that come from that have helped me to recenter and ground and process things a lot better. It helps me almost get out of myself in a strange
Sure.
way. And having that aggressive outlet of hitting has made me feel more in control, more confident. I love the instant gratification of achieving goals. So having martial arts and stuff, you can always set those goals on a regular basis and kind of achieve them right away, and then have the short term and then the little bit longer term and then the really long term kind of goals. And it's been very very good between teaching and the business part and being a student and continuing to learn has provided me the best outlet. And even now, I mean, I have 4 black belts, but I'm learning Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's incredibly hard, and it's putting me back in those situations, some of the ones in which I got attacked in. Um, but it allows me to work through things that are bothering me in all of the ways: mental, physical, psychological, and it provides the best support system.
Got it. I was just thinking about when you're talking about, you have to show up for a class, and that's the way you regulate because you have to be there in a positive frame of mind. You have to be there focused, engaged with your kiddos. Well, wait a minute. You work with just kids for martial arts or kids and adults?
Oh, kids and adults.
Yeah. Okay.
So I teach a multidiscipline. So I do everything from situational awareness, self-defense, to karate, to kickboxing, to Muay Thai, to Taekwondo. And I teach multidiscipline to from anything from 3 years old all the way up to adults. I also work with at-risk youth. students that are on the autism spectrum, and then people that have gone through trauma and abuse as well. Because I have a private sensory classroom within my facility that allows them the space, the freedom, and the privacy to have the best martial arts experience that they want to have.
Wait a minute. Is that room for people who are survivors of abuse? Is that what you said, or is that for autistic or who do, you probably pick somebody and say, "Hey, come in this room. I think this is going to work better for you." Is that right?
Yeah, it's anyone that is going well that just has challenges. So different challenges. I mean, I have people that have severe anxiety disorders, but going in that private sensory classroom, no one's looking at them. The noise is very low. I can work with my tone. They feel very, very safe. All the equipment is in there. With my autistic students, it allows them the freedom to touch everything and run around and get comfortable with all the equipment and get comfortable with the space and not have all the distractions of people looking or other people hitting a heavy bag or things like that. So it's been very good as a safe, secure space, but also it takes out noise, some visibility, distractions, things like that.
So it's sort of where if they're having a hard time focusing on where they're at, and with all of those other distractions and all those other perhaps judgy eyes, that they can kind of focus more on themselves and getting better and enjoying the activity. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, like you take out all the challenges and you just let them have the freedom of learning martial arts and learning a new skill set and having an awesome workout, having some fitness and some confidence building without trying to regulate their anxiety all at the same time or feeling embarrassed or being afraid that they might cry in the middle or be scared. They don't have to worry about that in that special private classroom. I have three
Got
classrooms, so it's just one of them.
just one of them. And is the measures that you take to help people who are on the spectrum, are they similar to the measures you take for people that you know that have experienced ACEs in their youth and are still dealing with that? Similar?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
Because their energy is very, very sensitive. The way they see the world is very sensitive. So with autism spectrum, I have to make sure that my energy is very calm, very regulated, very trustworthy, very compassionate, very patient. And when someone who's experienced, say, trauma, for example, they are more sensitive to energy. So they could take a mannerism as something more aggressive and they need to be more defensive about it, or they need to feel more on guard because they're not sure what's coming at them all the time. So with autistic students too, they have a lot of fears. They fear for their safety. They fear for, new things, not being prepared, being stuck, not being able to problem solve. And if you're a person with trauma that has that kind of anxiety as well, then it's definitely a very similar factor.
Makes sense. Makes it a little bit more welcoming, inviting, allowing them to be who they are and not trying to pretend something else, right? So that they didn't get picked out or picked on by somebody else, kind of a thing, right? Because that's kids that are different, people that are different, not kids, but people that are different tend to be those that get picked on, right? That's kind of how it seems to work, right?
Absolutely. And this
Yeah.
just helps them to figure out their confidence level and their skills so that if they want to go into a group setting, they actually end up feeling like leaders and they feel like they already know all the concepts. They can be proud of what they've learned, what they've developed, what they've practiced. So when they do go into the group setting, they actually have this huge sense of pride that it's like, I know that combination, or I have super strong board breaks, or like I know how to do warm up by myself. Like I want them to turn into leaders and have that confidence and have that foundation so that when they want to go into a group environment, they feel amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
think we're having some technical difficulties. Cannot see Alan at the moment. There he is. There you go.
Hey, there you are.
Hi. Oh, technology.
Megan, let me tell you what happened. Our conversation was so amazing, we blew up Google.
Yeah, we did.
We blew up. Sister Google had to take a break, but we're back now. So, all right. Um, um, your competitive success as a martial artist, pretty amazing. Talk about that a little bit.
So I'm an 11-time world champion in karate and kickboxing. So with all my different black belts and the divisions that I've done, I knew that I wanted to do better things, especially in the martial arts community, and I wanted to represent the martial arts community very, very well. And I thought that the way to do that was to compete on an international level in as many different rule sets and disciplines as I could manage. So, with winning my 11 world titles, this is kind of embarrassing. I don't remember how many world medals I've won or how many national medals I've won. I don't remember because I was so focused on making sure that every discipline that I taught, every discipline that I coached, being president of Team Canada, I was able to understand every rule set properly, have the best resume that I possibly could, and be at the top of my game. And I think that was more for myself sometimes than it was for probably what other people thought. So I thought if I, won world championships or had world medals, that I would take myself seriously enough where other people would too. And I wanted my resume to speak for itself. I didn't want to tell people, hey, I'm really good at this, or I've experience in this, or I've done 33 years now of martial arts. I wanted those titles and that experience to speak. And I wanted to be president of Team Canada so I could do some really great things for the community to be more inclusive. So especially towards women. So I wanted to fight for more female weight classes that are safer and more regulated. I wanted to change the code of conduct so that we could make sure that there was no abuse or discrimination or sexism, racism, anything like that in our martial arts community. And so I knew that I had to have as much clout as possible. So I competed as much as possible and trained as much as possible to be very, very deserving of those positions that I ended up receiving in the end.
Right.
So yeah.
Your expectations, I'm sure, far exceeded anybody else's expectations in terms of what you wanted to achieve, right? Is what it sounds like to me. So,
well, I wanted 10 world gold medals. Yeah, I wanted 10 world gold medals. And then when I won my 10th, I was like, is that enough? Like, do those really count? I don't know. Maybe I can go for another one. I did break my nose 9 times in the journey of doing that. And I won a gold medal at the world level, weighing in as a lightweight, but fighting as a lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. Because
what?
I didn't just want to be a good fighter in my weight class. I wanted to be a good fighter overall. Oh, as a lightweight, fighting the heavyweight girls, I felt like I'd been hit by a train. But I still won, so it was good. I wouldn't
Wow.
recommend people doing that, but
Yeah, no kidding. That's putting yourself in harm's way for sure. Oh my goodness. So with your Team Canada coaching type experience, I mean, your day to day, you're working with students and you're teaching them martial arts and you're teaching them so many good things about being a good human being and everything. Physically, they're not anywhere near the performance level of the students you would have had or the who you would have helped with the Team Canada folks, right? They would have been pretty elite athletes, I would have to think. Is that correct?
all the Team Canada athletes are pretty elite. Yeah. I mean, I do challenge my team a lot. I didn't have coaches for a long time, so I was self-coached for a very long time. I trained with some very big, very traditional instructors for a long time that didn't see the world quite the same as me. Also, I'm a right-handed southpaw fighter and I fight very differently. I fight very unorthodox, very untraditional. And when I coach, I sort of like to bring that in. I want to cater to what a competitor's body type is like and what their skill set is and where their strengths and weaknesses are instead of trying to turn them into like a purely traditional, purely orthodox type of fighter.
Right.
So by being that coach of Team Canada, I've got to help people achieve their goals that are very untraditional, very unorthodox competitors. It's been really cool.
Right. Yeah, sure. Makes sense. And that's kind of like we started this conversation about talking about being your best self. Well, their best self is how you're coaching them to be their best self based on their body size, their composition, how fast they are, whatever characteristic they have to bring to the table. It's looking at the advantages and maximizing the advantages, right?
Yeah, I've turned a lot of students into southpaws, I have to admit. Sometimes you just fight better on that side. And because I got to fight multidiscipline, it helps me to allow the students to fight in their best division. So some students want to kickbox, but because there are different rules and different divisions in kickboxing, they don't necessarily have to do full contact. They don't necessarily have to do rule sets with knees and elbows. They can do mat sport. They can do point fighting. They can do kumite. They can do low kicks. There's lots of different opportunities. And I wanted to be very experienced in that so that I could take the student and find the right division for them, the right fighting style, the right art, and then have them achieve success uh, through their own journey and their own individual journey.
Nice, nice. When you get a student and that student reveals to you some abuse in his or her life, what do you advise them? What do you tell them?
I think it's more specialized according to what kind of abuse it was, what the age of the student is, and kind of how they're figuring out how to deal with it. I'm a huge, huge, huge um, advocate of finding a good therapist. I really think that's very, very, very important. I think therapy is crazy important. And I think you need to find the right one. You need to find one that you trust. You need to look until you feel comfortable, safe, secure. You need to go with that. Um, it's really hard not to self-sabotage. So I do recommend that they try their best to stay as healthy as they can, physically, mentally, psychologically, um, to find trusted people that they get to be themselves around. So find that good circle of friends that wants to stay positive, wants to grow, is able to support each other on those good and those bad days. And then for me, I like to face my fears. So often, instead of telling them what to do, because everyone's experience is very different, I will share some of the things that have worked for me and how I felt, and things that I'm trying currently, and things that I want to try in the future. And then if it's something they want to explore on their own as a tool in their toolbox, they get to do so. So, because everybody is going to deal with things differently. I mean, for my journey in jiu-jitsu, I'm asking my instructors, my professors, to put me in situations that I have to fight out of that I couldn't fight out of when I was in those situations. But I've also had multiple panic attacks and total meltdowns and total fear and terror and total like overwhelming situations on the mat. And I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. But I'm now at the point where I can dive face first into some of those traumas in a physical level. So I'll just recommend things that have worked for me. It was like making sure I had enough sleep, making sure that I was very, very careful about what I ate, or if I had wine, or things that I was, wanting to self medicate with, but was trying my best not to. And the things that I did to prevent myself from doing that. And things that help my confidence, things that help me speak a little bit differently. And then also, I just let them know that I appreciate them sharing and that it's not their fault and that they are loving, kind, smart, worthy individuals. And I think that they're brave, and I think that they are very loved and very deserving of love, and that I appreciate them spending time with me.
See, Megan, you having that interaction with the person who's had that experience could be a whole change in the trajectory for the rest of their life, right? They had had a terrible experience with a human who treated them very poorly and made them feel worthless or helpless or hopeless. And Megan affirms them and tells them they're loved and tells them that they're perfect the way they are, kind of a thing, and that somebody else who's got a problem, it's not them, right? They're not at fault. No shame, no blame for them. I think that intervention, I think, is huge in terms of somebody's healing.
And yeah, it's just that I want to reassure them that even though something terrible happened to them, it doesn't need to be their identity. I'm making it not mine. I don't want it to be my identity. And they can still move forward and do some crazy, amazing things and achieve some crazy, amazing goals and help others and be a great leader and be a great mentor and be a great role model. And they can help people to feel more comfortable and trusting and secure. Like, I found a lot of healing in trying to be what I wanted for myself for other people. And I think that a lot of people that have been really, really hurt or have had something very traumatic happen, when they know they can take that pain away from somebody else, it's like very empowering and like it's pretty cool. And
Hmm.
so encouraging that positive leadership, mentorship, and support for others can be like equally as healing. And they have so much compassion for other people when they've been through it themselves. So they can come and be that support system from some like to that other person in the best way. And I think it does start the conversation and the trust between two people, and it creates those good relationships that can help both people, right?
Oh, definitely. Real important. One, know you're not alone, right? They're not the only person this ever happened to. Two, that it's not their fault and that, they are loved and lovable and totally 100% of value. And so that act does not in any way degrade their value, or those acts in no way degrade their value as a human being, as a person, as somebody who can go on to do crazy things, win world titles all over the place, be the coach of the Canadian Olympic team. Come on, that's amazing, Megan.
It doesn't define you. What happened to you does not define you, but it can definitely, um, like for me, I mean, I obviously didn't wish it to ever happen, but because it was, I feel like there is some really good things I can do about it. And I never wanted my abusers to win. And they win if I don't go and do great things because of what happened to me. I didn't want my goals to not be achieved because of what happened to me. I didn't want them to win. I didn't want to feel belittled or my power being taken from me. So I don't think that they won because I still went on to do all the things that I dreamed of doing.
Right. They didn't prevent it. And maybe you were driven that in spite of them, you win.
I sure was. I channeled a lot of my anger and my sadness
Yes.
into making myself feel more stronger, confident, successful, brave. That was important. It was how I learned bravery. It was how I learned more resilience. Is I took that pain and I tried to channel it into my goals.
Nice. Nice. When we were chatting about, like, if you had a young student and they had expressed something and what your advice would be. I know one thing that we have here that I think is that I learned through the Victim Services Unit is we call it here the Amethyst Program. It might be called something else in the rest of the province, but it's basically where they collect. Is it called the same Amethyst everywhere?
I'm not sure actually. Yeah, I have to look into that. I'm not
Anyways,
sure.
it's where they take the DNA samples, the data they would need to proceed in court. They record that data. They do it correctly and everything. But then the woman has a 1 year period where she can then decide whether she's going to press charges or not. Right? Because I mean, that's you've experienced this trauma. I mean, there's all the physical things, but then there's also what's this going to mean for my life and going to court and judges and lawyers and blah blah blah, right? And so they have the opportunity at least to defer, maybe not act at all, but at least defer to maybe a point where they feel a little more prepared or stronger or ready to proceed with that, right? So I think that's a beautiful thing to give some options.
I like that too because I mean, only now I feel like with what happened to me 5 years ago would I actually have the bandwidth to go through the legal part of it. I mean, when it happened to me, it was awful. I wanted to sell my business. I wanted to quit everything. It put me down such a terrible spiral that I did not have the bandwidth or the energy to go through trying to make it to the next day and the next week and be there for my son and just survive as a human and go through the entire process of everything.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
the crazy part was when I eventually felt like I could trust people enough to tell them, I still had people not believe me or think I
No.
made a big deal or make excuses or say, well, did you have a cocktail? Like,
Mhm.
what were you wearing? Like, judge all of those things that had no relevance. And so those things hurt bad enough when I
Sure.
was just trying to heal and survive. Like that. Yeah.
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 Yeah. As
I
it
like the
relates to
idea of being able to defer. That's great.
right, it gives some options, right? Because I mean, this is like this event could take your life and like turn it upside down for quite a while. The your was the person who 5 years ago ever charged? Then did you charge or no? Did you charge them and proceed with them criminally? No.
No,
Okay.
I did
But
not.
it just
And I
you
mean, that
go ahead.
is hard mentally and psychologically too. I feel very guilty. Um, but with going through the court process and the legal process before, it almost broke me before. And I I really had a hard time just trying to heal. Like my PTSD is now manageable. My anxiety depression is now finally manageable to to go forward. But I did talk to my therapist about it, and I said, you know, what kind of a hypocrite am I? What kind of a terrible person am I, where I'm not strong enough to go through going to court again and dealing with this all over again? Like, I'm just trying to be a mom, I'm just trying to work, I'm just trying to compete, I'm just trying to be a good coach. Like, I just don't have the time or energy or to relive it so much over and over and over again to charge him. And I said, like, does that make me a terrible person? My therapist is like, no, you get to decide how you recover. You get to decide how you deal with the situation. You get to decide how you move forward in the best way for you. And if that means that all of your energy and all of your focus just has to go on your own personal healing, then that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure it makes like nobody can make those decisions except for the person that's in that middle of that experience. And in your perspective, you're looking at it and say, it's way too painful for me to do this part. I'm going to work through this myself, kind of a thing, right? Now, does that mean that do you think your attacker was like a one-time thing with you, or do you think this is a pattern that he would have with others?
I think that, well, it was a pattern with me. Just the last time was the worst time, and the last time that he did it to me. But I think he has done it to other people. I think that um, some of the consequences that happened from him doing this, I think hopefully has prevented him from behaving in the same way moving into the future. And I hope that he has had a lot more self reflection through that. I don't know for sure. I don't always, I mean, it's such a tricky situation because I don't know whether or not you stop if you get charged or not. I have no judgment for victims that just focus on their own healing and not going through that legal process, especially with what happened when I went to court before. Uh, the consequences were pretty heavy. So
Yeah, and Megan,
it is hard. You have to do what's best for you. You
I
honestly just have to do what's best for you.
I agree entirely. My thought process, I just be clear, I wasn't being judgy or blamey or anything
No,
about that. I was just in my mind, the man who did this 5 years ago, I don't know if he would be aware of the pain and trauma he's caused, right? Like, is there a connection there for men who abuse? Like, is it intentional to cause the abuse, or is it another track that is kind of more selfish and self-centered, but not aware of the actual damage they do to other human beings?
just in my experience, they A, think it's normal to behave that way. B, will excuse it away. C, will blame the female for it happening. Like,
Right.
they'll excuse their behavior.
Yeah.
They'll completely excuse away their behavior. And I think that if getting caught, like, they're more upset about getting caught. They're more upset about someone finding out and their reputation being affected. They don't really think about the pain they've caused other people. They're more concerned about it not being a big deal to them or if it affects them in any way.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they have a lot of remorse because the ones that have done it and the perpetrators that have done it to other girls that I know, even in my industry, no remorse.
No remorse.
No remorse. And they think it's just behavior, just normal behavior.
Yeah. That's that. What's sad is then that repeats, right?
We have to change the narrative, and I think it is changing.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
if we could bottle up your pain, your, all the trauma that you went through at that time, and said to your attacker, here, drink a little bit of this, and he had that same experience, probably wouldn't do that again, I would imagine, like knowing what kind of level of pain and trauma that causes to other human beings. I might be wrong, but that's what I would think. I don't think we're all born, your boy, you were born to love, right? You're born that, you trust, you love, you want what's right for everybody else, kind of a thing. You certainly, there's no little boy that grows up and says, I want to get big and strong so I can beat or rape women or children, right? That doesn't happen, I don't think.
No, that doesn't happen. But also, like, you have to think about what happened to them.
I agree
as well, to make them want to hurt someone in that way.
Yes.
I mean,
definitely.
What was their normal to think that they could act or behave in that way, and like think that it's normal or okay, and be able to excuse that behavior away and think that there is no consequences for them.
Yes. Yeah. So, Megan, we're more than an hour now. That's been a nice chat. Megan, you're amazing. Like all of your athletic abilities and capacities, and your compassion, and you're working with kids, and you're working with at-risk youth, and you're working with people on the spectrum, and you're a mom to a child on the spectrum. Being a mom's tough already. Being a mom for a child on the spectrum's got to be a little more challenging, I would have to think. So, thank you very much for coming on and joining me and sharing how you are a champion for children. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice chatting with you, and hopefully the right people get to hear this and feel supported and feel not alone, and feel like there is lots of people in the community that have their back.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.